Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. In this explainer, we use the film Barbie as a case study to explore how feminism and masculinity are reshaped when identity is filtered through consumer culture.
All right, so let's dive right in. Look, the question here isn't whether the Barbie movie is good or bad. That's not really the point. We're looking at the systems the film puts on display. So the big question we're tackling is this: what happens when feminism becomes something you can buy, an identity you can wear? And what about masculinity? What happens when it loses its social purpose and just becomes a performance?
Okay, so before we can talk about how this whole system gets thrown into chaos, we've got to understand where it starts. And that starting point is Barbie Land. You really have to picture it as this perfectly sealed system, totally stable, where everything and everyone has a clear, defined place. You see, in Barbie Land, identity is just handed to you. It's totally effortless. You don't have to work your way up to become President Barbie or Physicist Barbie. You just are. There's no struggle, no long journey, nothing like that. Your entire purpose is just assigned. And the whole world around you exists just to confirm that you are who you're supposed to be. It's a system with zero friction. Absolutely not.
And that brings us to a really, really important point about power in this world. The kind of power the Barbies have, it's all symbolic. It's about what it looks like, right? It's about representation. Having the title of president or Supreme Court justice or Nobel Prize winner.
But here's the catch. It's not structural power. It's totally disconnected from all the messy, complicated stuff that comes with real power, like running an economy or making laws stick. Barbie Land gives you this perfect picture of empowerment, but with none of the actual machinery humming away underneath. Okay, so that's our starting point, our stable system. Now, let's break it. The first big disruption comes when an idea from the real world starts to seep into Barbie Land, and it's a very particular, you might say, consumer-friendly version of feminism. This idea has a name. It's often called post-feminism. Thinkers like Angela McRobbie have talked a lot about this. And the basic idea is, it's a kind of feminism that acts like the big battles are already won. The mission's accomplished. So the focus shifts, right? It's no longer about changing the system. It's about changing yourself. It's all about your personal confidence, your career moves, your style. Empowerment becomes a kind of personal project, something you can literally buy into. And you can see the difference pretty starkly here. On one hand, you've got revolutionary feminism, what someone like Bell Hooks was talking about, which is all about tearing down the entire system of patriarchy. But on the other hand, you have this post-feminist model that we see in the movie. And the goal there, it's not about changing the system at all. It's about learning how to win inside the existing system. The focus flips from collective struggle to personal choice. And so what does that look like in the story? Well, Barbie's big journey becomes this very internal, very emotional thing. Her big moment of liberation is all about self-discovery and making a personal choice for herself. It's not about actually changing the power dynamics of her world, or ours for that matter. All right, that was disruption number one. Now for the second one that crashes into the system. While Barbie is off discovering this empowerment as an accessory feminism, Ken stumbles upon his own version of identity, a masculinity that is all about posturing and status symbols. And this is absolutely central to understanding Ken's whole crisis. I mean, think about it. Back in Barbie Land, what's his job, his function? It's just beach. That's it. He has no real purpose. He gets no real recognition. So when he gets to the real world, he's not looking for actual responsibility. He's looking for respect. He's absolutely desperate for a rule book, a script that'll just tell him how to be a man. But what he finds isn't the deep, complicated, structural reality of patriarchy. The legal systems, the economic institutions, all that stuff. Nope. He just finds the shiny surface, the aesthetics of it. The horses, the big trucks, the whole performance of being in charge. He completely mistakes patriarchy for a fashion choice, like a new jacket you can just throw on. So his whole arc follows this really clear, systematic path. First, he feels totally role-less. Then he discovers what he thinks is a kind of status grammar, a set of symbols that seem to get you respect. He then takes this purely aesthetic version of patriarchy and imports it back to Barbie Land. And finally, he just performs it. He acts out dominance to finally get the validation he's been craving. It's textbook identity building, but from the outside in. So you've got these two big disruptive ideas: empowerment as a fashion choice and masculinity as a performance. What happens when they slam into each other back in Barbie land? Well, this is where the system really shows its genius. It just absorbs them, both of them. What the film lays out for us is this pretty incredible feedback loop. In this kind of system, how do you solve an identity crisis? You just adopt a new look, a new aesthetic. A real, deep structural problem gets swapped out for a performance of power. And you can criticize the system, that's totally allowed, as long as it all ends in a personal, emotional realization that doesn't actually change anything fundamental. The conflict is managed, contained, and neutralized. You know, there's a great term for this from the philosopher Mark Fisher. He called it interpassivity. And the idea is that something like a film does the work of critiquing for us. It performs our anti-capitalism on our behalf. It makes fun of Mattel. It pokes at corporate culture. And so we get to feel like we've been part of something critical and smart, all while we're literally consuming a product made by that very same system. It's brilliant, in a way. So, okay, why is any of this important? Why does it matter? Because these patterns aren't just confined to a movie about a doll. We see them playing out all around us. Think about it. Empowerment stories that celebrate individual success stories while leaving the underlying institutions completely untouched. Or a version of masculinity that's way more about status symbols than it is about social responsibility. And, of course, a consumer culture that is just amazing at absorbing any critique and selling it right back to us as a t-shirt. And that really brings us to the core argument here. The movie isn't just a story. It's a perfect model of how a consumer system operates. It shows how the system can take these huge, potentially explosive ideas like feminism and these deep-seated anxieties like a crisis in masculinity and just repackage them. It translates them into these safe, sellable, personal identity kits. So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. The film presents us with what looks like a massive, structural conflict, a battle of ideologies. But how does it resolve it? With a purely personal, emotional breakthrough. Barbie finds her humanity, and Ken learns that he's Ken-off. Their individual emotional journeys are nicely wrapped up, but the actual systems, both in Barbie land and in the real world, they're left perfectly intact, untouched, and ready for the next product launch. For the full, long-form, deep dive into this film and its systems-level analysis, follow the link in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level exploration, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or films you'd like us to explore next. This content was created using AI-assisted tools for research synthesis, structuring, and narration support. All analysis, framing, and editorial decisions are guided by human judgment as part of the Crisis in Perception project.